Hi everybody, welcome back for another video. In this one I want to talk about a little bit of a follow-up to my previous video. I talked about whether you should carry an extra mag or not, and in a situation of everyday carry, what would happen if you needed to use more ammo and you had already used all your ammo and then you have a second encounter. And you might think that's so rare, but the reality is when you use less lethal, by definition, you're most likely, highly likely, that what you're going to do is you're going to create a situation where the person walks away or you walk away and the other person recovers and they then realize, oh, I was hit with a less lethal. I've got some bruises. I got some aches and pains. But what are you going to do if, like in the scenario that I presented a while back in a previous video about home defense, what happens if they come back? They know where you live. What happens if after the less lethal use, they come back and they come back armed and they come to your home because they want retribution? Well, the same thing could happen in the setting of an everyday carry. And believe me, this is not necessarily that they're going to come after you immediately, like in the situation where you need a second mag or as another person. That situation is different. So what I'm talking about here is do you live in a big city where you have a lot of anonymity, and if you have an encounter with someone and you use less lethal, that person doesn't know who you are, they'll never know who you are, and you'll be gone, and that situation will never happen again. And that is probably, I think, the best area where less lethal will serve you well. In an area where you have a lot of anonymity and you can use your less lethal and then you can blend in and get away and they don't know who you are. But in the situation that you live in a small town, and I grew up in a small town where people knew people, and if there was an incident, it was reported in the newspaper, and all of the, everybody read the newspaper and wanted to see who had a crime, who got charged with something. Because people were nosy, they wanted to know what was going on. If you use less lethal to defend yourself in that situation in a small town, it might make the newspaper, it might be in there, it might be a line or two saying so-and-so was involved in a self-defense situation, and it would explicitly name who they are. That's the way it used to be when I was a kid. But even then, if you live in a town where it never makes it publicly, but you have an encounter, the chances that the person will know who you are much higher, or the person through the grapevine will be able to assess who this person was. And then the concern is, are you going to have to be looking behind your back for an indefinite amount of time because this person may be coming back for you? Now, definitely don't get me wrong. I would never advocate for using lethal force when you don't need to use lethal force. But obviously I'm referring to using a less lethal launcher in a situation where you maybe shouldn't have, like I've talked about recently, and you maybe crossed a line, but it wasn't, there was never any legal, the law was never called, but you crossed a line, whether it was a legal line or it was just you crossed that person's line and they realized this person has done something to me and they got away with it. And even though I was the aggressor, then in self-defense, they attacked me now, and that's the way they would think of it. And I'm going to go get them because I know who they are, because, we live in a small town. So this is a very realistic situation for a lot of people. Not everybody lives in a city of millions of people. You might live in a small town that's hundreds to thousands of people, and they know, and word gets around. And so retaliation is always an issue when you're using less lethal defense, because I always feel that, you have the intimidation factor and you can show your launcher, but once you pull the trigger and you've actually used it, that person knows exactly what you have and what you use to defend yourself, and they're going to make assumptions about you. And I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying that they will make assumptions and they will say, well, why were they carrying a less lethal launcher that was just only able to punch me a few times? Maybe it was an underpowered launcher, and that's even more incentive for them to say this person has only a weak option for self-defense. And they might then decide it's they're going to go after you and they're not intimidated. I think this is a dicey topic. Obviously, you want to use the least amount of force that you need, and not to cross the line and go into excessive force. But you also want to send a message, and you want that person to know they should not come back, because that really hurt, or that's very dangerous, and they fear for their life, because even if they got hit in the wrong spot. I've seen, the recent video from Hard to Hurt. You saw he took the Grimberg jewel from the gavel and like right on the chest. And had that been over just a little bit, right on the sternum, on this bone right here, that would have fractured the sternum. Had it been down here in the ribs, that would have fractured a rib. That shot was strategically placed in the best spot to make the demo, but that takes a lot of guts. I can appreciate what he did there. And the reality is, if you get hit with something like that, that puts you on the ground and you realize how serious that would have been if it had been hit somewhere else, that's less lethal that works. That's less lethal that has a bite. So when you are using less lethal, you want it to send a message, and you want it to be that kind of less lethal. Not that you can't use a 20 joule launcher, not that you can't use a 7 joule launcher, but those are more distraction. Something's coming at me. It might hit me in the face or the eye, and the person is, if they're not truly aggressive, they'll turn and allow you to get away. Something at the 40 joule level, that when you reach that threshold, that's the level that will stop someone, scare them. They'll think they're seriously hurt or they're shot. They'll go to the ground, and they will not want to get hit with a second shot. So the amount of joules that you deliver is really important. That's why the field needs more of these launchers that can deliver more shots around the 40 joule range. It seems like the sweet spot to me. As you go higher than that, you're just getting way too dangerous for less lethal. And if you go too low from that, you're really gonna have a failure rate and an iteration number 1 failing on you, and you're gonna have to go to iteration number 2, or you're gonna be in trouble. So I think you wanna find that level, and then you have the size problem, because once you get to 40 joules, it's really hard to keep it small. So I understand all of the circular arguments about less lethal and size and power. I've talked about that a lot. But just make sure that what you do use has enough kick and enough punch to deliver that message, so that they don't want to come back on you. Because the worst thing would be, like you could see in my thumbnail, to be looking over your shoulder and everybody's coming for you, and you're like Scaredy Cat John Wick. That's not what you want. You don't want to create that situation where people are coming back for you because you use something that you shouldn't have used in an improper way, and it wasn't a really serious situation that warranted what you gave. And even with the 40 joule, let's say the person took that 40 joule, they took a couple, and they were seriously hurt. Let's say they had to go to the hospital and they get out of the hospital. Well, they're going to come. They're back, and people get shot with real bullets and they come back. So it's a real thing, and the chances of that happening are greater with less lethal. Everybody knows that, but I just wanted to call it out and mention the fact that you just need to be careful. It's just another layer of things that you need to think about with your less lethal. Let me know if you think that is a real concern or not. I just want to hear lots of opinions. Sometimes I come up with an idea and a point of view that I agree with, but I want to see what you think. I value your opinion. And I'm not in any way saying that my perspective is right, because everybody's perspective is coming from a different point of view, a different background, and a different need. And so I'm gonna leave it with that. Look forward to hearing from you. Everybody take care, be safe. We'll see you in the next one.